Another person asked if you think that the fraternity, the FSSP, will likely be able to continue to offer the traditional mass unimpeded. Do you have a thought about that?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think what all of us are really nervous about. So on the one hand, it's been encouraging to me to see in the past 6 months a very strong, how shall I put it, almost like a peaceful resistance movement to what Pope Francis is trying to do, not just on the part of lay people, where you'd expect it, or on the part of lower clergy, where you also might expect it, but even on the part of bishops themselves. And I've talked to many bishops. Obviously, I can't tell you their names, or they'd be very upset with me. But I've either talked to bishops or I've heard of bishops whose attitude is, we are riding this out. We're going to ignore Traditionis Custodes as much as possible. We're going to ignore the responses to the dubia, to the fake dubia that the CDW published. These bishops, they know that when they filled out the survey that they sent to the Pope, they said positive things, and that people are lying about the survey, right? So bishops like that are not going to implement this document. Now, they're not going to jump up and down and say, hey, Rome, I'm not implementing what you said we have to do. Of course they're not. That would be suicidal, right? But they're going to nonetheless continue. They're going to do confirmations. I know of several bishops who are scheduled and plan to do confirmations. I know bishops who are scheduled to do ordinations, minor orders, major orders with the Pontificale. I don't think the Vatican is, and anyway, with the fraternity, yeah, that's what we're all nervous about, right? We're nervous about it because the Vatican, depending upon the direction things go in, they really are going to try to dismantle the FSSP and the IXP, the Institute of Christ the King, in whatever way they can. They could try it bluntly and just say, you guys are dissolved, like they did with the Franciscan Friars of the Immaculate, or they could try it in subtle ways, like by putting almost like a test act, like you have to say the Novus Ordo on this occasion or this many times or whatever, and so however it might happen, I think we just don't know what the future holds, and we don't know how these Ecclesia Dei communities will respond. Will they, in the moment of pressure and maximum injustice against them, will they actually have the strength to say, non possumus, we cannot do this. This is against our consciences. This is against our constitutions. This is against the vocations to which we responded from God. We are not going to cooperate. Do whatever you want to us. We're not going to stop doing what we're doing. I would love to see that. I think that would be a tremendous moment in church history, of a moment of breakdown in this ridiculous ultramontanist paradigm that we have, where the Pope can do anything, can never do anything wrong, can never commit an injustice, can never be said no to. That's so dangerous and so harmful. When it comes to matters of tradition, I'm not talking about contraception. Everybody should obey Paul VI's Humanae Vitae. I'm not talking about that kind of dissent, the liberal dissent. I'm talking about when the Pope himself turns against Catholic tradition, which no Pope should ever do. That's not in the job description. Then people should resist that. And I'm hoping to see that. But it could also happen that these organizations, these orders, they say they collapse or they fragment, and people go off in different directions. I mean, either.
Dr. Peter, well, in a sense, this little conversation is a part of a type of really loyal resistance on the part of Catholics who really want the church to be strong and confident and effective and evangelical. So we are part of that, and you've done a brilliant job. There were two things I wanted you to re-emphasize, and then we're going to have some questions. And I really think we could go for hours. Perhaps we should have a regular roundtable or a regular monthly update. But you said two things. You said the bishops know that they wrote positive things in their survey to Rome. I want you to explain that, and Diane Montagne's article in that regard, which casts a doubt on the entire legitimacy of the whole enterprise. If they lied about what they received and the basis for their decision, then we cannot take them seriously. talk about that, the survey that they took and the fact that you know, and then the way in which we ought to react ultimately in serenity as we watch the centuries go by. We're in the middle of a century. You said, well, maybe this was a good thing. It'll give us a chance to be very courageous at a certain moment, and we wouldn't have had that opportunity otherwise. Give this positive spin on it that people could get excited about living through this difficult time. Those two questions.
Sure. I'll take up the latter point first. You know, it is a thrilling time to be alive. It's difficult. Some people are going to lose their TLMs, their Latin masses in their area. I think a lot of people will keep them, and that there will even be a kind of growing interest in them. Certainly there's anecdotal evidence of congregations growing even after July 16th. And of clergy expressing more interest than ever in learning the Latin Mass. So I think that this is a temporary period of buffeting by rough weather, stormy weather. And, you know, yes, in stormy weather, branches get ripped off of trees, you lose fruit, things happen. But storms also often make the strong trees stronger. They get rid of the dead wood, and they ultimately redound to the good of the ecosystem. So I think that we can be positive, and we should be positive about this trial. You know, any age of persecution has been an age of purification and an age of strengthening of the church. That's always been true. That always will be true. Now, I mean, there are some cases in history where persecution actually wipes out the church in a certain area. But I don't think that's what we're looking at, because we're looking at a global movement. Almost 100 countries in the world have the Latin Mass. There are thousands of priests, millions of lay people. This is not going away. This is just not going away, regardless of what the Vatican tries to do. If the Vatican didn't succeed in the early 70s, they're not going to succeed now. So, but we have to remember that God is the one in charge of history. He's the Lord of history. He allows evils to bring greater goods from them. And the way that we derive those greater goods is by our prayer and by our penance and by our fidelity. What I mean by that is we have to keep remembering that we can't fix the problems in the church by ourselves. We absolutely can't do that. It's only his intervention that is going to fix these problems. And you know, what Lent is coming up. So if we fast during Lent, or if we fast more during Lent, we should do it intentionally with the intention of the restoration of tradition and the defeat of its enemies. You know, because our Lord says some demons are only cast out by prayer and fasting, right? And there are demons at work right now, for sure. And fidelity, right? I mean, the liturgy can be taken away from us, but the traditional faith can never be taken away from us. And nobody can take away from you a breviary. I use a breviary. I pray every day parts of the divine office, the traditional one in Latin, actually the monastic office. And nobody can take that away from me. Nobody on the face of the earth. So remain faithful in every way that you can remain faithful. So what was the other thing you asked me about? Oh, Diane Montagna.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Diane Montagna, a good friend of mine. She's great. She obtained access to the report that the CDF prepared for Pope Francis, summarizing all of the responses that had been received from the bishops around the world. And she described it to me. It has pie charts, graphs, statistics, excerpts, everything. It's a big report. It was given to the Pope in person. He was very excited to get it. And there's no doubt that he wanted to see what was in there. He probably thought it was going to be a lot more negative than it was. But she went through and she calculated that the majority of the responses were either positive or neutral. The really negative responses were definitely the minority.
No, just to make clear, the responses of the bishops to how the Latin Mass was in their dioceses.
Yes,
and they said, well, pretty positive. The people are nice.
Yes.
They're very faithful. I don't have a problem with extremely rigid and politicized people.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
this was the report that officially went to Rome.
Exactly. That officially went to the Pope from the CDF. And so it's clear that somebody is not telling the truth when they speak about how there's this big problem in the church, the traditionalists, and we have to stop it as quickly as possible. That's definitely not the perception of the bishops. And how do we know that Diane is telling the truth? Well, I mean, I know that Diane is telling the truth. I asked, is there any way to publish this report? No, it's not possible to publish this right now for various reasons. It's not being made up, however, it's really there. And how do we know that it's true circumstantially? Well, we know it's true because the majority of the bishops in the world have not acted to implement Traditionis Custodes, right? If they were complaining to the Pope and saying, we have this huge problem in our dioceses, and then the Pope gave them the weapon with which to deal with the problem, and then they all say, oh no thanks, actually I didn't really mean what I said. No, that's not plausible, right? It's what Diane reports matches the facts. It clearly matches the facts, as well as the fact that she's quoted verbatim many things that bishops said in these surveys. You can find it on the Remnant. There are 3 articles. They've got loads of quotations from bishops. Fascinating to read. So I'm afraid to say, well, you said this calls into question the whole action. I think that's true, but I actually think that there are easier ways to call it into question. What I mean by that, the it here is the motu proprio, Traditionis Custodes. Traditionis Custodes itself has many errors in it. It has factual errors, it has theological errors, it has canonical errors. And especially Article 1, which attempts to make the Novus Ordo the only lex orandi of the Catholic Church. That is completely false. There's no way to defend that position. It's against what Paul VI himself said explicitly, as has been demonstrated in an article that just went up this morning at Rorate Caeli. So I recommend reading that. He explicitly contradicts Paul VI. Everybody needs to read that. It's a very short article, but it'll change your day. And it explicitly contradicts the age-old testimony of the church, the immemorial testimony of the church, that the Tridentine Rite is the lex orandi of the Roman Church, according to the solemn definition of Pius V in 1570. In Quo Primum, there's no possible way that a pope can say that the Tridentine Rite does not express and is not the lex orandi of the Roman Catholic Church. So, I mean, the document itself, it's like it blows up from Article 1 onwards. It has no possible traction.
Hi, thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe to our channel by clicking on that red subscribe button and click that bell so you'll be notified when we upload new content. Check out all the links below for subscriptions to Inside the Vatican magazine and to the Moynihan letters, which is free to your inbox. You stay connected. It's content that you can get nowhere else. All that information is below. Thank you.